How's it going, everyone? So I want to talk about one issue that gets on my nerves quite a bit, and that issue is about framing the debate. Very often, there are hot button topics that are discussed in the mainstream media and on different news sites, and those topics are just really not presented from a point of discourse where people get you to think logically about an issue. And I put up top the two ones that I see the most often abused in terms of putting things into context and thinking about the issue, and that is climate change and vaccines. And the context is abused so much because instead of thinking about the ramifications of the proposed policies associated with a claim, they're just often presented from this concept of, oh, if you deny this, you're stupid, or if you agree with this, then something else must follow. So, for example, with climate change, very often there's this debate framing that says, oh, if there's climate change, it's done by humans. That means that we have to take action. We have to use government to stop different types of productions of fuels and force people to live simplistic lives. And I think that there's a lot of things that are not addressed even when considering that basic foundation of, oh, if humans are causing this global warming or climate change. And notice that it used to be warming and it was semantically changed to climate change, so that way it could be adaptable no matter what is going on with the weather. But the point is that just because something is happening, let's just say in this case maybe the Earth was warming, then it doesn't automatically mean that something else must come from that. It doesn't mean that everybody else must become slaves to primitivism and that industry must be abandoned. I think that you have to first say, okay, well, if humans may have caused something, does that mean that this other thing would not be happening if it wasn't for humans? And if you look at the change of climate, obviously not. Ask the dinosaurs. Clearly, there are things outside human existence that changes climate and causes catastrophic changes for the geography of the Earth. And not only that, there's this idea that nobody ever fleshes out of a right to climate. Who creates a right to climate? Think about that. At what point does somebody have a right to say, oh yeah, I live in Florida, therefore it must always be hot, or oh, you live in Canada, it must be cold? Nobody ever thinks about it from that perspective of, oh, if you live in a cooler region, maybe a little warming would be great. There's more crops, fewer famines, fewer deaths the the cold snaps and from the lack of food. Of course, there could be changes of balances across the globe with other people suffering because of the heat, but that doesn't mean there isn't already suffering because of the current climate in different locations. And that's kind of the irony here, is that these philosophical foundations never fleshed out. And then when it comes to the application of, oh, well, okay, well, then what could be done? Nobody thinks about that. What are the effects of primitivization or, reduction in industry? Who is being hurt because of that? Who is not being able to rise up and provide more options for health and for safety because of these policies? The unseen of the economics is not taken into account. And so that type of debate framing and those logical fallacies of thinking that just because maybe something is true, then automatically, oh, everybody must stop what they're doing with industry and become, city dwellers and live in a confined space and be primitive. That must logically follow. I think the same thing goes with vaccines. This is often one that is, I think, left to one option versus another, a false dichotomy. And the framing there is, oh, are you anti-vaccine or are you pro-vaccine? It's not, the issue's not about that. It's not about whether or not, vaccines should be done or not should be done, or should not be done. The issue is about what's in the vaccines and what are the effects. For me, I think vaccines can be great. They have measurable benefits in terms of building immunity against certain types of viral infections. The issue, though, is that just because there are vaccines that are good, it doesn't mean that they're all good, and it doesn't mean that the timing of them is always right. In other words, just because there may be a time when a vaccine is good doesn't mean it's great to group 10 of them together, or to do it really too early in life, or when the baby's CNS is still developing. And it doesn't mean that just because a vaccine raw on itself is good, it doesn't mean that the adjuvants or the things that help preserve the vaccine that might be added more so today are good. You could have a delicious fruit, but if you add arsenic to it, it's poisonous. It doesn't matter that the fruit is independently good. If you add something poisonous to it, does it make it good? And that's the problem with another debate, framing. It shouldn't be framed from the issue of, oh, vaccine or no vaccine. No, it should be the timing of vaccines, what's in the vaccines, the development cycle of the individual person, what can their bodies handle at what time. And these nuances are extremely important. And it is a matter of a lack of critical thinking. And that's one of the things that I really rave against on this channel is whenever there are a ton of logical fallacies presented because ideas are not fleshed out properly. And I hope that you, with everything that you do, think about things from that perspective of it shouldn't be a one thing or another. It shouldn't be a dichotomy that's false. It should be, what are the contexts in which this idea is being implemented? What are the unseen consequences? What are the specific actors upon which this thing is being putting its effects? And how those things will relate down the road for that person and other people. You can't just put things into a do or don't, do or die. It has to be something that is taken as a whole and looked at individually and systemically if it's policies related to a broader scale. Because if you don't, then you will miss out on the unseen, and you will miss out on how to differentiate between doing something that's really helpful and beneficial and something that could be potentially destructive. And if there was, let's just go back to the original topic of climate change. There's climate change, and that could be devastating for humans. Well, then think about how that could be done voluntarily. What things could be done, or industries that could be promoted voluntarily to help curb potentially hazardous outcomes that might lead to lots of death or disease for people, or outbreaks of disease because of change in climate. That's how it should be framed if you're going to think through things logically and not in a simplistic dichotomy. The simplistic dichotomy is what the mainstream media and government does to dumb down people and make them think it's only one or the other. No, sorry, there are many factors that have to be thought through, and you have to break things apart piece by piece and apply the good where it's good and the bad where it's bad. It goes like anything else. Someone can eat peanuts, but someone who has an allergy to peanuts, they can't have it. It doesn't mean peanuts are bad, it just means that person can't. The same thing goes with any type of big topic that is paraded in front of people and made it seem like, oh, if you don't do this now, everybody's going to die. I mean, we've already seen that Al Gore has eaten his words tons of times over in terms of him saying, just a couple years back, oh yeah, the ice caps are all going to be gone, and then clearly the ice caps have seen some regrowth. And that's why the debate has been flipped again to say climate change and not global warming. That way they can adjust and say, okay, see, look, it's changing, it's fluctuating, it's a long-term thing. People need to cut the bull crap and look at things specifically and individually. Don't just look at the generalities of a proposed idea. Look at what's going on. What are the unseen consequences? What still is happening beyond the specific actors and what you're trying to blame? What types of policies are trying to implement? The carbon tax policy, which was popular back then, but anyone who has a little bit of math sense understands those are nothing more than taxes on the general population, and it really kind of destroys the economies across the globe, and especially affects third world countries the worst. They suffer the most from those types of policies. It's something that you have to actually use your intelligence to run through and think through, which is something that I guess you could say the opinion leaders through mainstream media and government don't want you to use. So I know a lot of people here are here because they do use their brain cells. They have more than 2 brain cells to rub together on these topics. So keep it up. And if you're considering this for the first time, think about how you can apply that critical reasoning to every aspect of your life and to big picture debates that are put in front of you. All right, take care, everybody.